Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today we're going to discuss the history of black people living in Portugal. I decided to make this video in English because I understand that this is a topic that can interest more than just the Portuguese people and people living in Portugal. It's a very big chunk of the world's history. So as in order to make it available to as many people as possible, I decided to make it in English. I based this video and I got a lot of my sources from this book here called The Black People in Portugal. It's written in Portuguese and written by José Ramos Tinhorão. It was initially published in 1988 and was released again and revised in 2019. Alright, without any further delay, let's get going with the topic. It's 1415. The Portuguese army wins the Battle of Ceuta from the hands of old enemies, the Moors, with barely any bloodshed, and kickstart what will be known as the Great Discovery Ages. But the King of Portugal, Henry the Navigator, didn't intend to stop his country's expansion there. As a man with a mind way ahead of its time, he knew that conquering Ceuta was the doorstep of a continent carrying endless mysteries and riches. Soon after, under the sponsoring of a joint effort of noblemen and traders from Lagos in southern Portugal, an expedition was sent down the African coast first of what is today Morocco. The Portuguese exploration and conquest of North Africa was initially carried out with the spirit of a crusade, that is, to fight infidels, but also it fulfilled a scientific mission. The Black Continent was highly unknown at the time, and Henry the Navigator held knowledge of geography and languages in high regard and knew that that type of information would be instrumental in succeeding the conquest of Africa. As the caravels progressed further south, the Portuguese came into contact with a different type of Moors, the Guineans. The initial encounter with blacks happened through the Moorish caravan owners. During the skirmishes, black slaves were often used as a trading commodity to pay for ransom or as a tribute to the powerful invaders. Blacks were often referred to then as Moors and weren't distinguished from the northern African Berber population. Other times, they were called just Ethiopians or Guineans. The first blacks captured by the Portuguese forces were christened but were not enslaved, since slavery wasn't permitted by the Pope, who was the highest authority in the Christian world at the time. At the hand of the Portuguese, black slaves provided for translators and precious allies in navigating through the unknown lands and the different tribes, customs so foreign to Europeans. The Portuguese explorers didn't always hold the black Africans they met in high regards, as they were seen as barbaric and backward. However, what was seen as a missionary and scientific effort quickly turned into a mercantile venture. The King of Portugal realized that military conquering the entire African coast would be costly in manpower. Instead, he opted for establishing diplomatic relationships along the African coast with the local tribe and engaging in trade with them. The Portuguese explorers would bring gifts of little commercial value and trade them for what was mostly abundant around those latitudes: human beings. The Portuguese king saw a profitable business opportunity there and sought the approval to acquire black slaves by means of force or trade profit from Rome in return for the capital and effort invested. The request from the King of Portugal was granted by Pope Nicholas V in a bull of 1454. In a matter of years, smuggling was organized and black slaves were shipped to Portugal. Just how many were they? The most pessimistic account report there were 3,000 or 4,000. The most optimistic estimation, if you can call it that, suggests that there were between the beginning of the slavery trade and the mid-15th century, some 1,500,000 black slaves were brought to Portugal. The presence of black slaves were reported by several foreign visitors to Portugal. They were noticed and reported mostly around Lisbon and also in Évora, in the southern part of the country. An emissary from Prussia to the Portuguese court requested 2 black slaves as a gift. Much to the king's brother's astonishment, who reportedly answered giggling, "Why don't you pick a present of greater value?" Another testimony reports that blacks made up no less than 10% of Lisbon's population at the time. However, the exact number are unknown since no census were published at that time and are impossible to accurately determine nowadays. The topic is still controversial and is ground for ideologies and different political agendas. The only thing that can be said with certainty is that black slaves existed in Portuguese as early as the 15th century. Once in Portugal, the black slaves would be sold and made for a cheaper workforce than free workers for well-to-do families to employ. They were typically used to do the most repulsive and rough tasks the Portuguese population didn't want to do, such as sewer cleaning, trash collecting, and field working. The luckier ones would work as housekeepers or iron workers. Their presence was usually kept in the down low, but they also made some noticeable contributions to the religious confraternities of Lisbon. They didn't have a dedicated cemetery, and they buried their dead bodies, which is disposed in the trash dumps until the King Manuel I ordered the digging of mass graves dedicated for disposing of black slaves in 1515. Slaves kept being smuggled into Portugal up until 1755, when the Marquis of Pombal abolished slave ownership in Portugal and in Portuguese India, but not in the African colonies and in Brazil. The reason behind this were multiple, but were mostly an attempt to stop competition to free man labor and also to supply in manpower the lucrative mines and fields in the colony of Brazil. The black population of Portugal then after became practically extinct. It wasn't until the 20th centuries when Portugal had a black population again in the form of immigrants coming mostly from former colonies in Africa. What happened to the once large black community living in Portugal? There are several explanations. Some, given the harsh living conditions, simply died without offspring. Another explanation is that the number of black slaves